Hey friends, I have Franklin here with me today, and we are going to have a conversation about the emotion scared.
Oh, so it's time for the Monday Minute.
Hey. All right, so we've been touching on kind of the core emotions in an emotion or a feeling wheel, and so today we're going to talk about scared. Franklin, I just want you to kind of jump in first and talk. I think it's easy for us to assume everybody knows what scared means, but let's talk about what scared means for a minute and kind of define it before we move forward in it.
I appreciate you because I think the thing we probably want to make the point of is scared is a valid emotion.
Yes.
It's not something to be scared of. The fact that our body's trying to tell us something.
Mm-hmm. So I think something that's really important is you talking about the validity of a feeling. And I think sometimes it's so easy to sort of quantify an emotion as either good or bad.
I agree.
And so this might fall into the bad emotions.
And that's unfortunate because what we're looking at is when I have an emotion, it helps me indicate what's going on.
Yeah.
I want to be very careful instead of letting it determine my response because then it can really start messing with our minds.
Totally. Well, and when you say that, it reminds me how easily we let our emotions define us when really kind of what you're talking about is our emotions are informing where we're at and kind of what's going on around us. And then once we know that, we obviously then get to
make a really informed decision on what to do with the event.
Exactly.
Now, often I think we're looking at that scared can really sense fear. Mm-hmm. And that's what I always think is interesting. If we're looking at the emotion wheel, fear or that column is the only one that deals with survival.
Yeah.
Absolute physical survival. And that's where it's important to really look at what it indicates and is it a thought or a very real threat? Mm-hmm. And that's the art of letting it have an intellectual component. What is this emotion telling me?
Sure, absolutely. I love that. Will you touch a little bit on, because I think there's so many different words for being scared. There's fear, you and I have
anxiety, worry.
Yeah, exactly. And so how might somebody know that they are feeling one of those feelings, say like in their body or some other way?
I think that our body, I think it's putting the word to what's actually happening with us is probably the art of the great folks I work with is that what is that real feeling? Mm-hmm. So if I'm really, really scared about maybe public speaking, are you really going to die if you mess up with public speaking? So we're really going to be talking about what word is in there. Mm-hmm. As opposed to, oh my gosh, I feel this, so I have to avoid it or I have to do something.
Sure.
Maybe it just says, I'm not very comfortable with public speaking yet.
Yeah. Well, and you kind of talk about the idea of that little portion of the emotion wheel really having the one to do with survival. Yeah. And so is there a way that people can decipher between something that might be survival and something that's not survival?
Yeah, it really is about getting the information available to you, even in the moment. So even though our body's telling us, hey, we may not survive, we get to use our intellect to go, hold on. Yeah. Where's the data? That's a big one I always use. I take a cognitive behavioral approach. I know there's lots of other great therapy folks with our folks here at Mayfield, but in the cognitive behavioral, we're looking at really if it's not an imminent threat, you actually have time to check on why is your heart beating, why is your body stressed, why you're sweating it out, what's really going on.
I love that.
I think if it's a real threat, like a rabid bear, then we're not going to sit there and do the cognitive behavioral.
Right.
We're just going to go ahead and respond.
Out.
And that's okay.
Yeah, totally. Well, and I wonder if it's situations like that that sort of teach us to respond so quickly. And then it's learning how to slow ourselves down and think through, gather the data to then decide what you want to do about it.
That I have time.
Totally.
Maybe that's the part we're looking at. The body feels like we got to do something.
Yeah.
But intellectually, unless it's a very present threat, we have time to really figure out why we're feeling it.
I love that.
Yeah.
will you touch a little bit on, I think there's always a little bit of a cultural belief or expectation around different emotions. So what do you think we kind of encounter in our culture in regards to being scared, feeling fear, things like that?
Wow. When you say culture, that just opens up so many people's own personal experiences.
Yeah.
Having been active duty myself and a mental health guy through the whole time, it was very interesting to meet so many folks, our special forces guys and stuff, that would actually say that they needed to deny fear.
Wow.
Which is interesting, because if you're denying a valid emotion, it's going to start messing with your abilities.
Yeah.
So I gave credit to a lot of the great leaders I met that would actually speak to their service members about how they had experienced fear, giving permission to have the valid emotion and use that energy to actually perform, as opposed to making it freeze you or something like that.
I love that. I think that's so great, because it is a feeling, like it is a human experience. Nobody gets to be void of experiencing that fear, that scared anxiety feeling. And so when people, especially in a culture or even a subculture, you could call the military that, when they're willing to acknowledge that, even in the midst of what they're required to do, I think that's really empowering for people to have those conversations.
I would go, and I'd also mention that how we experience it as a child may bring into issues that are worthy of discussing with a therapist as an adult. Unfortunately, if you were just always experiencing a lot of fear as a child, it can kind of map your brain, and it gets you kind of to, my first reaction is always fear, and it'd be helpful to sit and work with a therapist to process that was then, that's not now.
Totally.
And how to
kind of
leave
rewrite
that in the past.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, friends, I really want you guys to think about the idea of, when I'm afraid, am I in imminent danger?
Right.
Or do I have some time? And see if you can even just take a deep breath, gather some data, like Franklin's saying, why do I feel this way? Why is my heart racing? See if you can just walk yourself through that. And for some of you, you might be able to. Some of you, you might not. And I think that is helpful information even for us to understand, do I have the capability to slow myself down and grab some information? So I know this is going to surprise you, but I really want you to pay attention, take notes, think about what's going on in your life, and even start to think about, as a kid, how was being scared addressed? Was I scared all the time? Did it never happen in my life? Kind of, because like Franklin's saying, this can affect the ways that our brain kind of navigates being afraid. So Franklin and I are actually going to continue this conversation over. So you want to make sure and click on that link that takes you over to our YouTube channel. And we're going to keep the conversation going, because I think there's so much more to be said about fear. I think there's a ton of facets about the idea of feeling scared. And so we're just going to jump in. All right, friends, get yourselves to Friday. Enjoy your weekend, and we'll see you back here on Monday.